Okay, since we've been on a recent trend here lately talking about people who are involved in these kind of ships right here that we see, I thought we'd discuss another topic where it shows that where they had been before others. This just came out in October of 2021. Norse explorers reached Azores 700 years before the Portuguese. Until now, it's believed that the Azores island group was discovered by Portuguese sailors in the 15th century. However, a new study shows Norse explorers had brought animals to the island 700 years earlier. Furthermore, the Norsemen burned and engineered the wild wooded landscape to better suit their cattle grazing. Here's a view of Mount Pico, which early explorers would have seen before reaching the Azores. And if you know anything about maritimeness and stuff, these peaks like this would help form clouds out of nowhere seemingly. And so someone fishing off that coast would have seen this perhaps, especially blowing this way, and been able to see it also. Also, if there was a distant volcano and they were out there at nighttime somehow, they would have seen an effect like that too. Probably would have led to a lot of thoughts and ideas. Located about 900 miles or 1,448 kilometers off the coast of Portugal, and 930 miles or 1,497 kilometers northwest of Morocco, the Azores are a string of 9 volcanic islands in the mid-North Atlantic Ocean. The islands first became visible to mariners when the 7,713 foot tall Mount Pico that we looked at here came into view, and this famous peak is often associated with the mount at the center of the legendary island of Atlantis. The mythical Ice Age kingdom written about by Plato. Now the foundation story of these remote islands has been tipped upside down. Let's discuss that idea about Plato first. It's believed that people were living out on these islands, if you go with that, whenever the sea was much, much lower. The global maximum, it's some 400 meters lower or more. And due to rising and sinking of lands, it could have been much more exaggerated than what we see today. And you would think about whenever you took away 400 meters of land. But it's not going to leave some giant land platform, really, like what was said in the ancient tales. Of course, we've looked at a few things like Herodotus and so on, and they seem to be going off of hearsay, and a lot of these early navigators gave forth hearsay that now we easily know, and I'm sure they figured out part of it then, was false. There be dragons here, there be dragons there, and all of these things, and now we've looked at it and realized that a lot of those areas they say there be dragons is in between coming out of the Pillar of Hercules and meeting another destination. Something that if they had on the map, secretly, they could have easily been able to discern themselves that, I know where this is, whereas others would have no idea. According to our current mainstream narrative, Prince Henry the Navigator, based at Tomar in Portugal, is believed to have commissioned Portuguese sailor Diego de Silves to land on Santa Maria Island in 1427 AD during his search for new oceanic trade routes to Asia. This is 1427, so things like this were already going on. We've recently discussed about how they didn't think the world was flat. Many people knew that it was quite round, and the fact that that wouldn't have been just right out there that you would run into Asia or any islands off of Japan and so on, unless at that point there were just strings of islands all the way across, which does kind of do in the Hawaiian areas, and you can see how that leads up into there. But let's just go on. Azores Geopark website history records Infante de Henrique, so the same man, was introducing large animals to the island between 1431 and 1432, later sending human settlers there first in 1439, but this traditional history of the Azores has just been rewritten by people with those boats again. This is a depiction as a monument right here of the discovery in Lisbon, and it celebrates the Portuguese age of discovery, during which the believed Diego de Silves discovered the Azores. Well, perhaps he discovered it again. A lot of times we've found that the idea of even America is a rediscovery and a rediscovery, and then apparently the Amerindians had discovered it at one time, and so on, and it rolls back. Finding answers in ancient fecal matter in the Azores. Yeah, it's going to get shitty. An international team of researchers has published a new study in the scientific journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, and the study explains that stigmastanol was found in many plant types, but also inhibits biosynthesis of cholesterol in the livers of animals. According to an article on PhysEd, co-author Timothy Shanahan of the University of Texas said the team analyzed stigmastanol samples from the fecal matter that had been left on the island by imported animals, and they had all dated between 700 and 850 AD. This is 700 years before the supposed Portugal discovery. Not to crap on the Portuguese in any way, for they felt like they were finding the island in the first place and did so. Just like Columbus, and everybody seems to want to crap on him whenever he found it. But apparently it was known well before. Recently did a video showing people with these boats that we're talking about, where they might have gone to this island during this time that's here, because this starts to correlate with those mummified dogs that they found, which now they genetically finally have gotten a hold of, and oh no, they show to be Scandinavian, Norwegian, hunting, and sheepdogs. And that proves something. This early occupation date was supported by the results of an analysis of sediment cores taken from Pico Island's Lake Penexono. Hope I pronounced that right. These samples show an increase in charcoal particles in the 8th century, suggesting the first explorers burned huge fires, and according to northern bush and slash and burn techniques, was a northern method, or Norse method, of cutting and burning forest and woodlands to create fields and pastures, traditionally known as swidens. Sounds a whole lot like Sweden. But the stigmastanol and charcoal samples pointed towards a new settlement date for the Azores around the mid-8th century, and far earlier than previously thought. Here's a beautiful aerial image of a cove that's coming in here, or a lagoon type of area, the Azores, and it looks like that this is some vantage point here, because there's a parking lot there at the bottom where you go to it. Gorgeous islands just out in the middle of nowhere, kind of a third of the way across that big pond, in between the Americas and the Old World. Rewriting European Navigational History of the Azores. In a statement published in Eureka Alert, Santiago Geralt, a co-author of a new study and paleoclimatologist at Geosciences in Barcelona, said that between 700 and 850 AD, so a 150-year period, There was a drop noted in the native tree pollens that were there. This observation cemented the emerging hypothesis that people were burning down native forests to create pasture land for grazing cattle some 700 years before the first Portuguese explorers arrived in around 1427 AD. Yeah, we've kind of seen this idea of these Norse explorers and how far they had gone here recently, and I just, like I said, figured this is a great one to add on to it, and it might show some connectives and a timeline and a direction in certain times of the year. Because they had been here for a couple of years, they noticed the trade winds are going this way, and then they switch and calm down, and you probably don't want to go there now or try to go anything that way, but then they switch and push and you can go there. See, the thing about this is if you go anywhere north of this, you can get caught in the doldrums. This is whenever you just lose wind and you can sit out there and just rot and die. People found this out the hard way a long time ago. You really got to come up across the top, skirting the ice type area, or cut straight across. And when you cut straight across, you got to kind of be going a little south and cutting against the wind to even carry it well. But then that just slams you into the top of South America and the islands that are there, just like what happened to Columbus, and repeated first attempts show it reaching out there and ending up there, whenever the idea was trying to come pretty much straight across. Lead author Pedro Reposero of the University of Azores said that the new study shows that sediments gathered from a lake on another Azores island showed evidence of non-native ryegrass. Yeah, so this is a cultivated plant. Finding evidence that Norse explorers had arrived in the Azores in the 8th century with large animals and grasses that are native to Scandinavia 700 years before the Portuguese is a major discovery. However, perhaps the most interesting observation to arise from the new study is that these early human settlers on the islands sparked a profound environmental and ecological disturbance. Well, they could tell that the islands changed then too, and so are they trying to say this was the first time? Or there were other people before that didn't manipulate the land so much and really just did it in small areas? They didn't have the grazing lands needed or the farming techniques before that point. Comes to the mind is the Guanches, which if we just look just south of here, and the first set of islands that you would run into off of the North African coast, you can find a people that were still in the Stone Age almost, and left behind, one of the few Caucasian remnants that you could find. They had very tall stature, blonde and reddish hair mixed into them too, and one wonders if they were just Berbers and the natural blonde and red-haired people that were all across North Africa going back over 30,000 years and had come across there, or because we know of boating, is there some contact that makes into there before that point? Because they have other things going on in that island that are different. One special one is that they do make pyramids, kind of a stepped formed, but there it is again. It goes on. Furthermore, it was rapidly changing ecological conditions that were identified as the primary reason the Norse explorers arrived in the 8th century. A series of climate simulations based on data gathered from the new sediment cores suggested the seamen took advantage of abnormally robust northerly winds and weaker westerly winds to sail from northern Europe, which occurred in the 8th century. Well, I wouldn't believe that happens only then and all the time. Again, there are seasons that you can find that it would be possible. And whenever people had a round earth idea back then, and the fact that you could go all the way around and there might be land in between here and there, That'd be an easy stepping point if you could find it. And it looks like perhaps these Norse people had gone on down there. Things that are not found here, though, are the dogs. I find no mention of it. Not that there might have been with them, but then from this point, somewhere, these people had dogs, and they made it all the way to South America, about corresponding to the time of this ending here. And so whenever they decided to take off, they may have taken off to the west. Something neat to look into. If you notice, there's a lot of articles nowadays that no matter what they do, they talk about climate. And I know this one guy here is hooked up with climate, so he's got to go off of that. And it seems like climate drives everything. Well, no, it doesn't unless you let it. Back in earlier times, people had no control over things like that. Nowadays, we have more control. And I'm not talking about trying to do climate control, thinking that you could just somehow turn on a big air conditioner and cool things down across the planet or do things like that. Surely we need to watch our pollutions. But if we look at the timeline and the way that it's gone on, these climate changes have been going on forever and switching and going back and forth, and it's believed that that's the engine that drives evolution itself. So it's not bad, and it's not the new Satan, and it's really gone far too far in this idea, and they keep pushing this concept, which was going on whenever I was a kid, and by now we're all supposed to be dead, and all the ice caps are melted away, and the world's ending, and the sky is falling. But that didn't happen 18 years ago. That didn't happen in the year 2000 when computers were going to freak out. That didn't happen in 2012. It's still not happening now. But we are finding out more and more about the breadth and stretch of people in ancient times and where they had actually gone to. And it looks like those Scandinavian Viking type people had gone here to the Azores. And again, that could have been a stepping point or a stepping stone on the way, because it is 1/3 of the way basically on the way to the Americas. Let me know what y'all think down in the comments. Peace.